Today's video has been sponsored by our partners at the Sojourn, as this critically acclaimed audio drama returns with episodes 4, 5 and 6 of Season 2, featuring a full voice cast including Dominic Keating from Star Trek Enterprise and Ben Prendergast from God of War Ragnarok and Apex Legends. You can get all episodes of the show, including the entirety of Season 1, on Nebula, Spotify, Google Books, Apple Books and more. They're also all available at every tier of the Patreon, linked below, with higher tiers getting fun bonus content including the first volume of a behind-the-scenes art book, ship charts, anthology shorts, a cross-section poster, and more. If you don't know what the Sojourn is, then head over to their YouTube channel for free samples, as well as extra lore content and ship breakdowns. The Sojourn Season 2, Volume 2, out now. Spinal weapons, where a gun is either so big a whole ship is built around it, or so powerful it has to be solidly mounted in place. It's such a cool idea that's led to some truly iconic and enduring fictional spacecraft. But do they make sense? That is what we'll be looking at today, along with some crazy real-life examples and alternative options on today's Spacedock. Forward-fixed guns, or spinal mounts, or whatever you want to call them, are a decently popular design trope to see in sci-fi. But they have also been used in real life, not the spaceship part, the fixed gun part. There have been many armoured vehicles that lacked a turret, but their guns could still point around a bit, so they don't count. But in the 60s, the Swedish consumed a lot of surströmming and came up with the famous S-Tank. This aimed with its hull and worked a lot better than you'd expect it to. Fighters have had forward-fixed guns since they were first used in combat, but those don't really feel the same. Surface attack is where the theme really shines through with aircraft, like the popular or the insane 102mm gun the Italians shoved into a bomber to shoot ships and boats with. And those too have had forward-fixed weapons, like the USS Holland and the awesomely named USS Vesuvius with their compressed air dynamite guns. Did you know about these? Neither did I. And of course, there's also broadside fixed guns, but we'll talk more about that idea later. For now, we're looking at the benefits of using a spinal mount for your big gun, and the most vital and important one is aura farming. Enough said, really. The other key benefit is that not stuffing your weapon into a turret means it can be a lot bigger. This allows weapons relying on acceleration, like particle beams, and kinetics, like railguns, to push their projectiles to higher velocities. Particle beams may also have a little trick up their sleeve which we'll get into later. Write it down to remind me. These higher velocities can increase the damage on impact, but more importantly, they give the weapons a greater effective range, something we've talked about in detail in this video here. Solidly mounting a weapon directly to the structure of a ship also makes it more accurate. Giving it a strong and stable foundation removes a lot of the wobbles and vibrations that come from putting it in a turret and moving it around a lot. The recoil is also easily predictable, since the gun is always facing the same way, which is always opposite the main engine. The other thing with turrets is that they're filled with all sorts of stuff to point the gun, and they need their own armour. Getting rid of turrets means the entire ship can be lower mass, or spend that extra mass on more defences. And not only can you have more defences, you can also really focus them in the direction of your enemy because you're going to be pointing at them all the time. That means you could stack so much armour or shielding you basically become invulnerable to return fire. But then again, we see this sort of directional defence stacking on tanks, where they are most heavily protected at the front, despite having turrets. And now the unfortunate downsides of spinal mounts, like the big obvious one of needing to point the entire ship to shoot at something, which is probably going to be a lot slower than if it were mounted to a turret. A whole ship has all this other guff like engines, propellant, power plant, habitation. All that is mass. And yeah, a turret has extra mass, but it only has to turn itself. Turning a whole ship requires more effort, like you clicking the like button. Cheers, it does help us out. I'm not sure the gun laying would be any worse though. You can do some extraordinarily precise pointing as we see space telescopes do. It would just take longer to get there, and might struggle to track a moving target, especially one that's close up. At some point, that moving target is going to go faster than the ship can turn to track it, but that implies it's probably gotten pretty close. And really, all that does is imply some interesting ways for ship combat to work, with big spinal guns having an advantage at range, but smaller and faster stuff being able to counter them when close up. A bit like what happened with torpedo boats and planes in real life. Practically speaking, yeah, this is a downside, but from a vibes and interest standpoint, it's not really, is it? The other huge problem with a forward fixed gun is that since forward is towards the enemy, you can only ever do engine burns in that direction. Not great if you wanted to try to move away from a target, or really just go anywhere at all that isn't head on. Yeah, there's a little bit of jinking you can do with RCS thrusters, but for a big maneuver you have to pick between shooting and moving. If you want to do both, then you're forced into alternating between the two, like the Rocinante doing its insane spins when trying to escape the bigger and more capable Pella. It's a really cool scene, but it does demonstrate how suboptimal this gun placement is. So, with those pros and cons in mind, what sort of vessel is a good fit for these weapons? I'd say things with more specialised roles rather than more generalised ships. Things like siege weapons or assault tanks, but just up in space. A ship that's meant to crack the toughest defences on something that doesn't move much, like smashing down planetary defence shields or breaking an orbital fortress. Or some type of craft that's intended to punch far above its weight class, so that's why it carries a weapon far too big for it. Some little thing meant to engage capital ships but still be able to harm them, like a defence satellite, or a weird torpedo boat at range sort of thing, like that crazy Italian bomber from earlier. To some extent, monitors fit this archetype. In fact, one of the things I was thinking about for real-life examples was HMS M1, a submarine monitor which carried a huge battleship cannon. But this can turn its gun, so it's not fixed, so it doesn't count. But should it? Should the M1 and those older armoured vehicles count? They still have to point the vehicle mostly at a target, but not fully. So their aiming options are a little better, and they can still get many of the benefits from spinal mounts, like a bigger gun or more focused defences than their fully turreted brethren. There's also even options for having a fixed weapon that can also aim. We just need to go higher up the tech tree from kinetics to lasers. Unlike kinetics, the shape of a laser weapon doesn't really matter. The equipment for generating the laser can be any old shape and fit anywhere into a craft, and then the beam it makes can be bounced off mirrors to a lens array that aims it at a target. This means that a fixed direction laser doesn't really make any sense to have. Does look pretty cool though, doesn't it? Oh right, yeah, particle beams too. Thanks for reminding me. These can sort of work as a fixed mount with aim, though it's a lot harder to redirect a stream of super high velocity particles. They don't like to turn very much, so at best you'd get maybe a few degrees of aiming. But that can mean a lot at the huge distances you'd get in space combat, and is way better than not having that capability at all. But if you really want fixed weapons but don't want all the problems of a spinal mount, then try broadsides. The simple difference of not aligning weapons with the engine lets you actually move orthogonal to a target while still shooting at it, so you get a whole 360 degrees of direction to move in, rather than none at all. Yeah, your ship might end up being a really weird shape that's wide rather than long, but it's a vacuum. That doesn't matter. I will admit that broadsides does make a whole different feeling ship though, and that may not be what you want, because as I said earlier, spaceships that are just a flying gun are cool. And when you get down to it, isn't that what spinal weapons are all about? They're not really a real thing outside of very rare instances, so they're exotic. Put it up in space and that effect gets multiplied. That is why spinal mounted weapons, despite their impracticalities, have been and will probably remain such a staple in sci-fi. You can support Spacedock by joining our Patreon, where you can get our frigate and spacefighter design reference books. Alternatively, you can support us directly through YouTube by becoming a channel member. Thanks to our supporters, and thank you for watching.